I want to tell a story about Jim Beam whiskey and Burger King. And no, this is not about a bad night in Vegas, I promise. These two things go together and they make sense. My story is actually about the importance of small acts of kindness in changing people's lives. But for all that to make sense, first I have to tell you a little bit about how I grew up. So I was born in Uzbekistan. My family came to America when I was 1, and they moved to Metro Atlanta. The year was 1995, and they moved to Atlanta because the Summer Olympics were happening there in 1996. So immigrants from across the world knew that Atlanta was a place where you could go, not necessarily speak English, but find some kind of work to do. Both my parents had gone to college. They studied chemistry in college, but they didn't speak English. So unfortunately, they couldn't leverage their skills to get jobs in a relevant field. But they both worked. My mom started off as a maid at a hotel. And her way of learning English was she took night classes at Georgia State University, which is in downtown Atlanta. And to let you know how out of it we were from mainstream American culture, what she used to do was she would take me to her classes. And in the Soviet Union, it was a common practice to leave your child on the sidewalk because it's like socialism and everyone's nice and they'll take care of everything. So she showed up for the first day of class and she left me out there, and a policeman came running after her and was like, "Ma'am, what are you doing?" She's like, "You'll take care of him, right? It'll be okay." And he was like, "No, we don't do that here. You cannot do that." So she learned very quickly. My dad had a different approach to learning English, thankfully. For me, he worked at a liquor store as a clerk, and he learned English by speaking to his customers and became friends with them. And this liquor store was in a strip mall next to a Burger King and a Longhorn Steakhouse. And that geographic fact actually ended up changing my life a lot, because as I grew older, we went to Longhorn Steakhouse and I noticed, why is it that all of our knives in our kitchen are the exact same as the one at Longhorn Steakhouse? And it turns out it's because the employees at Longhorn Steakhouse like to drink beer, and so they got to know my dad. But there was one man who my dad got to know the best. His name was Dayton Miller. And he would come in every week and he would get a handle of Jim Beam whiskey. And this is the South, and so Dayton Miller is this very kind of small, unassuming, but somewhat intimidating looking older white man. And so if you're from that part of the country, you might make certain assumptions about what he's like and how he thinks and how he treats people. And certainly you wouldn't assume that he would be friendly to a guy from Uzbekistan named Amir Makhmudov. But he became friends with my dad. He came every week, probably bought half the store of Jim Beam to fly out. But he talked to my dad, and my dad became very close with him. And he figured out that my dad had a background in chemistry. And it turned out that Dayton Miller worked at the CDC, which is headquartered in Atlanta, the Centers for Disease Control. And he realized my dad had a science background, and so he said, "Why are you working here? You should come help us out." And so my dad said, "Okay, I'll do it." And so he came on as an unpaid intern at the CDC for a year. Eventually that turned into a job. And a couple years later, he was able to bring my mom in, and they've both worked at the CDC now for about 20 years. Fast forwarding many years, I grew up, many things happened. But I found myself having the honor of a lifetime. Over the past couple years, I worked in the Biden administration at the White House on the COVID response team. And I'll remember we were remote for the first couple of months because we were still in the midst of the pandemic, but we went to the office the day after the big 4th of July party we had on the South Lawn. And I came in wearing my suit. I'm very excited. I may be smelling a little bit like Jim Beam myself. Now I walk in and I'm walking down the hallway, and I heard someone call my name out. It said, "Mahmoud, what are you doing here?" And I turned around and I saw this woman who I'd never seen before, but somehow she knew my name, which is kind of weird because it's like not a normal name. And she said, "Mahmoud, you came to my house when you were 5 years old. You don't remember me, but my name is Maureen Barty, and I was your dad's first boss at the CDC." And Maureen ended up being one of my colleagues. I worked with her every day on the COVID response. She had been detailed to the National Security Council. And my life felt like it had come full circle in that moment. So I want to conclude with the lessons that I took away from this chapter of my life. Number one, you can never judge somebody by just how they look. You can see their skin, you can see their eyes, you can see their body, but you can't see their heart when you first meet them. That takes a little more time. Number two, you never know how a small act of kindness to a stranger can really change not only their lives, but the trajectory of their entire family's lives. Thank you.